Officially live. Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's event. My name is Ian McLean. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work in the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples as we seek a renewed relationship based on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. I'd like to take a moment to thank our partners and sponsors of today's event. Without their support, chamber events and programs like this would not be possible. So a big thank you to our title sponsor of the Vision 1 Million Are We Ready series, Conestoga College Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning. Our silver sponsor, our friends at Gore Mutual. Our bronze sponsors, EY and the Boardwalk. Our community partners, the City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, Communitech, Cornerstone Association of Realtors, Explore Waterloo Region, North Guide, the Township of Woolwich, and Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. Our production sponsor, Goodco Productions, and to our host here this afternoon, the Ken Sealing Waterloo Region Museum. Please join me in welcoming these incredible partners. I'd also like to recognize some folks who are in attendance with us here today. It's like old home week. I saw most of them this morning at the pre-budget consultation with Minister Bethlenfalvy, who we'll hear from later today. But we do have on the panel, Karen Redmond, Regional Chair, Dorothy McCabe, the Mayor of Waterloo, Sandy Shantz, Mayor of Woolwich, Mayor Barry is here. Where is he? There he is. How could I miss you? Mayor Barry from the City of Kitchener. City of Kitchener Councilors Dave Schneider, Bill Ioannidis, and Scott Davey, I think, came in. There he is right there. As well, we have from our board of directors, Chloe Hamilton from Warm Embrace Elder Care. Where's Chloe? She's here somewhere. Back. Also have, we're doubling up today. We've got a past chairs meeting going on after this. So past chairs of the Greater KW Chamber, Jeff McIntyre, Brian Bennett is here from the City of Kitchener, past chair, and Kelly McManus, University of Waterloo, all past chairs. And they're responsible if you have any problems with me being president of the chamber. All three of them have their fingerprints all over it. Well, thank you all for being here today. Today's discussion is an important one for our community, and it's a conversation that's happening in many places across the region. We as a region are planned, and this are projected and planned to reach almost 1 million residents by somewhere around 2050. And really, it doesn't matter whether it's 2040, 2050, or 2055. There are a lot of significant things that need to happen, so we're ready to be 1 million. We're ready to be to house people, to have the jobs of the future, and be a place worth living. So today we're going to focus, our first in this series was healthcare. We did have the presidents of Grand River and St. Mary's and vice president from Cambridge Memorial Hospital to talk about healthcare, not just the new hospital and the governance issues, but the healthcare infrastructure and talent that's required for us as a growing community. Today, we're going to focus on housing. We'll hear from three very incredible speakers who will talk about the housing, the growth that we need to find in this community around all types of housing. And so I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers. Jeff McIntyre is the president of Grand Valley Construction Association since being appointed in 2022. Jeff is a community builder and connector who has experience with organizations and businesses that focus on continued growth through innovation. He has held numerous leadership roles in both the public and private sectors. He's the past chair, as mentioned, of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce and served on its board for more than 15 years combined. He is also a former board member of the Grand River Hospital Foundation, spearheaded the Small Business Ventures program at Conestoga College, and founded several small businesses. He also has experience in the insurance industry. Scott Higgins is a passionate business and community builder who as president is helping HIP developments play a leadership role in the evolution of Southwestern Ontario. Scott's desire to achieve both business and community success is driving the vision behind HIP's building more than real estate philosophy. In addition to simply being a large residential and mixed-use real estate developer, HIP Developments actively creates and supports public spaces and events that inspire community confidence and joy. Scott invites you to open your hearts, minds, and spirits to explore new possibilities and imagine what cities built for the human spirit can bring for our collective future. And we're pleased to have Chair Karen Redmond. She, of course, is serving her second term as chair of the Regional Municipality of Waterloo, having been elected in 2018 and re-elected in 2022. Karen is also the chair of the Board of Health and vice chair of the Waterloo Region Police Services Board. Karen has been dedicated to community service for several decades, including roles with the Board of Education, a councillor of the City of Kitchener, a member of Parliament, and a regional councillor from 2014 to 2018. Karen also served as Chief Executive Officer of Habitat for Humanity, Waterloo Region from 2010 to 2018. In other community activities, Karen has served as chair of the Independent Living Center of Waterloo Region, president of the Rotary Club of Kitchener, and a board member of Martin Luther University College, formerly the Waterloo Lutheran Seminary. She's an elder at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church of Kitchener and is a recipient of the Queen's Jubilee Medal and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Please join me in welcoming all of our panelists up to the front. Every time they have this fern here, I think we're doing an episode of what is it, Beside the Ferns or Behind the Fern? Yeah, but we won't do that. Let's start with all of you. There is no end of the housing that's required as we grow. Affordability of housing, homelessness, and homes for families that are starting up. The whole array of housing needs that we have is significant. Let's maybe start. I'll start with you, Karen. The region of Waterloo, local municipalities, and the private sector need to collaborate together. Let's talk about some of the ways that collaboration is happening right now. There's more. I'm sure there's more to do, but let's talk about what we're doing right now.
So it's a great question, Ian, and I have to tell you, I'm so proud to be on this stage with two very valued partners as we go forward. We need partners to get the job done. And we had a housing summit that included the development industry, elected officials, housing advocates, academics, faith-based organizations, and various levels of government, as well as economists who convened a one-day symposium so we could talk about good ideas. We recognize that we cannot do it alone, either as local governments, the regional and area municipalities, although there's some tools in the kit that can do it, but we really need developers to step up. And I have to tell you, I sit on many provincial organizations, and I'm always wowed with how quick the development community and civil society step up to say there is a gap and we have to help fill that. So I think we have to continue to go forward and be innovative, which has always been sort of our cornerstone. But as a regional government, we've stepped up and looked at ways that we can invest, building more affordable housing. And that comes down to policies and programs at the region, and we're working on those. We have a waiting list of almost 10,000 people waiting for affordable housing. And that's really stunning. I still remember when it was 3,000 and then it was 6,000. It's almost 10,000 people. So we need rental units and we need everybody to come to the table. We've taken on building better futures, and we're building more affordable units at the regional level. We used to build 50 a year. Now we build 500 with a goal to get 2,500, and we will meet that threshold by 2025 and probably surpass it. So that's what we're doing on regional land because it was quick and it was something we could do. And I know area municipalities have looked at their land inventory too, but it's going to take all of us to address this.
Scott, you've talked before about the challenge of we need more, and you do multi-res, but we need more of everything. And we've in some of the discussions with Build Now Waterloo Region, identifying just the scale of the challenge and what's before us. what are some of the things that we are going to need to do? Continued collaboration, obviously, but talk about some of the things that are holding us back from making more progress right now. And remember that we only have 40 minutes and we have several more questions to get to.
I didn't bring a list. Ian, the biggest thing that we need to do collectively, and I think Chair Redmond was really integral in this conversation 2 years ago, was rebuild the trust. We spent too many years breaking down the trust with the development industry and the community, trust between the development industry and politicians. We were seen as adversarial, we were seen as profit hungry, and some of the industry was, frankly. And then conversely, we were ideological, we were bureaucratic and process driven, and we just drove ourselves into these two different fields, and we didn't know how to get back. I mean, I said to my wife the other night, the greatest irony I can find in life is everyone loves their city and hates developers. And I don't know how we got there, but we got there. So, part of the Build Now initiative that you had talked about was really, there was no secret sauce in complex math or, procedural planning approvals faster. It was really just put the smartest minds that we can find in the room that are involved in the housing process. So be it constructors, be it sort of gatekeepers and bureaucracy and the political environment, be it social service and community members across the housing spectrum, and bring the private sector in. And we're going to stare at each other long enough that we trust each other first. And then we're going to start to work towards the solutions based on that level of trust. And you'll hear some exciting things coming out on the Build Now initiative, which I encourage you to look up. But City of Kitchener is a partner. City of Waterloo is procuring land, and we've has led lots of discussions with us. But it was all the CAOs, townships and cities included. It was through Karen's leadership to bring us together and keep us together long enough that we could form a bond of trust that now we can start to unearth the opportunities. And math is central to that. Here's the numbers. Here's who makes money on housing. How much taxation is in housing, how much development profit is in housing. Trying to unearth all of that so that you can get to practical solutions that are deliverable. And I think we're getting close.
I'm going to come back to some of those things that are going to affect us in the short term and the longer term about building different types of housing. But I want to go to Jeff. You've had some creative things with the Grand Valley Construction Association about getting more workers into the skilled trades, trying to find creative ways. That is one of the, it's certainly one of the biggest barriers to building more, is we just don't have enough skilled workforce. Maybe talk about those chronic shortages, some of the things that you and your organization are doing, and we are very supportive of the innovation that's happening and the cooperation with folks like Conestoga College that are pumping out graduates in these programs. But talk about those chronic shortages and some of the innovation that's happening to make sure we have the workforce to build the housing of all types.
Okay, thanks. We've had this discussion for a long period of time. For up until about a year ago, every construction company was saying, I need people. Well, there was a bit of a downturn, and we can probably look at this as a bit of a reset, which is fantastic in the sense that it's leveling it off a little bit, and they're just not looking for anybody with a pulse at this point, but they're rather looking for people that can build the community. But a year or two ago, we were talking to Minister of Immigration, and they would say, how many people do you need in this community to satisfy the needs for construction? I always said 10,000. And the first response of the government, federal, was, yeah, we'll get them. And I said, great, where are they going to live? I mean, we have a situation in this community whereby it's really hard to find a place now. So we were so concerned about that, with Conestoga College and, the cutbacks potentially on the international students coming in. We need those people. The problem was a housing situation. So our first pass was to see what we had in the community with our inventory that we currently had right now, and reached out to Karen and the team at the Region of Waterloo. And our hypothesis was there are people that live in this community now that are interested in careers in construction and the skilled trades, but they've not figured a way to get a job. And we have employers who are looking for people regularly, and they'll post an ad and they'll get 1,000 people, but none of them have even the word construction on their CV. So our hypothesis was, what if there were people that lived in this community now? So we came up with a program. So this started at the federal level, promising people, moved into the provincial level, and they funded a program called Path to Employment right now through the region. The region is, through their people, are looking for people that live in the community right now, so we don't have to find housing for them. That's an issue. We often these people are on social services, whatever. So we've got a number of individuals that are coming into the program right now. We're giving them skills training. We're giving full PPE. We're giving them paid work experience, and the program is ridiculously positive. Our first cohort, we're halfway through now, 75% through, but half of the people are employed. About 35 of the 50 have got a placement and now are full-time employed in their career of choice, which is absolutely fascinating. We've moved 3 out of shelter. So if we look at the numbers on this, it's really kind of emotional, but what we've realized that there are people that are going to help us build the future, all these housing and all the different forms that they're here now already, and there's probably more and more and more of them. So this program is going to continue to expand, but it took looking internally to say what's here to determine what we're going to do to satisfy the need. And that need is not shutting down. I mean, there's more and more demand for housing, and there's more and more people that want to come to this community. We just got to figure it out.
One of the things that I want to talk about our region's ability to actually increase the amount of housing that's built to meet the demand. We just know that is just on growth alone. We, by our certainly our math is somewhere around 70,000 units if we're going to be 1 million people. That I don't think we've done that in the last 75 years. So we got a lot of work to do to meet that. And so maybe I'll in your own way, for each of you, there are a lot of challenges and headwinds that we're facing. Interest rates and high inflation, the cost of construction itself, the scarcity of labor, the fees that are included in all types of housing, the speed of approvals for developments, that's still a challenge for contractors and developers. The cost of materials itself, everything has gone up. And so we've got those challenges. We've talked about the human capital. How do you, when you put all those things together and say that's the downside, maybe I'll start with you, Scott. What's your sense of our ability to fight through those things and be able to meet the challenges ahead of us? And because we have to figure out a plan.
Ian just convinced me to find a new job. I won't do that. When you stack them all up, we're at a period of time in real estate cycles, and everything's a cycle. Everyone remembers, well, some of us remember the early 90s. You get into sort of early 2000s was a financial crisis. There's always ebbs and flows in the real estate market, and growth will always come back. It just will. We're at a particularly interesting point in the cycle because a lot of costs have stacked against it. I think, one step is the planning process is a difficult one. I think it has been streamlined, and I will say there's a noted difference both in the political arena and in the sort of staff environment to process applications faster. We do think, though, that we're an adjudication body of the province, but I think the province won't care if we build more housing. So I continue to encourage those that I work with to say, it's one thing to turn every rock over in the field and look under it to find a problem, or maybe just turn 20 over and leave 80 there. The province isn't coming to look at the other 80 you left there. So we have to get into a mindset where we are very procedural, and we've sort of built our KPIs in a bureaucracy to be process driven. And that's risk aversion too. Like if the premier comes later, we should just tell them, make sure regions and cities and townships can't get sued, because then they can take a little bit more, like fundamentally it's the first law I would pass is you just can't sue the government. Too bad. But because what that turns into is everything's a process, and everything's a process is everything's time is everything's cost. The other thing I think we'd look at is, anybody else a land developer in the room? See, they all quit because it's hard right now. I'm still here. The other thing that had happened out there is when the market ran so quickly, right? And COVID was just an accelerant to it. Everybody and their brother or sister decided they wanted to become a developer. So the politicians and senior staff had to deal with a plethora of applications. And you will hear in the newspaper all of these things that are going to get built because they've been approved. I would venture to say 70% of those were done by land speculators that have no practical development knowledge, no building knowledge, and what you think is coming is not going to come. We let that happen, and it drove land pricing through the roof and land scarcity for those that actually build. And it was pure speculation. And we have to get that out of the market. The challenge we have now is I have to sit in front of those peers and say, I need to downzone the site because what was planned is not based in any economic reality, except now the process is another official plan amendment and zoning amendment. And so we have to somehow kind of cut through it to decide, and I don't know if we're even allowed at a local level, but we have to decide who's building things and who's speculating on land. And we should support those people that are building things and develop trust and legacy because they'll actually deliver. And that's not to be a barrier to new entrants, but we did too much of the speculation side. And now we'll say we have 120,000 units approved in Waterloo region, but why aren't any of them getting built? It's because the math is hard and those that speculated on the land don't know how to do it. And so that's one thing we need to figure out how to change.
Karen, a couple of things for both the lower tier municipalities in the region is getting the infrastructure, getting things ready to be built. So the pipes in the ground, a lot of that core infrastructure. We know that there's deficiencies in the funding model for lower tier municipalities. But we somehow, I mean, is that one of the things that we need to be pushing the provincial and federal government is more for infrastructure, for that core infrastructure to be ready for more housing developments?
So we make that point all the time as a collective. So the area municipalities in the region will go to the provincial government and make that case. The reality is there are a few tools in the kit that the province has provided us with. We at the region had tax exemption for affordable housing, and it now allows area municipalities to follow us if they want. So they will not have to pay taxes for a period of time, but the housing will have to become affordable for 60 years, which is a really long time. But we find that one of the problems is affordable housing in rental units when they come off of their mortgage are no longer affordable. And it brings us up because it is about building, but it's not that white picket fence in greenfield development necessarily anymore. And it is about housing, but it's also about the infrastructure. You know, I think about Conestoga College, and I think the investment that they've made in skilled trades. But I also know that the Cowan Foundation gave a huge donation to make sure the PSWs were there, because the reality is Google and Amazon and all the people that are coming to invest in the region and bring talent into the region. And we're such beneficiaries of our amazing two world-class universities and Conestoga College, because they bring those people to a community and they realize that they love the lifestyle. And a lot of that is that urban vibe that you can get in a big city, or the lovely rural feeling you can have when you're in one of the townships. So all of that bodes well for us as we go forward. But if I'm a high-tech worker and I am going to want somebody to deliver my pizza. I'm going to want somebody to work at Starbucks. So looking at the fullness and the range of services that people count on as a quality of life. And I'm looking at Michelle back there, and then we have to have entertainment and we have to have draws that will bring people to this community and recognize the vibrancy that exists. But that growth is happening now. And I think that's one of the things that people need to recognize, is that we talk about 1 million ready in 2051, but we know that that growth is already happening now. So I think we have to be really attuned to how we continue to work smarter. For instance, one of the things we've done at the region is we know that we're being approached by faith communities that want to reimagine what their footprint looks like. They've already got the infrastructure going past, the bus goes past their building, they're already hooked up to water and sewer. So how can we reimagine and help them to create more intensification? And I just want to sort of say amen to Scott's point about the planning and development that was so ridiculously intensive and high density, and what people are now recognizing that's no longer practical. So those are things that we have to face collectively as a community to figure out how we go forward with the housing build that will suit the needs now and in the future.
Jeff, you talked about some of the innovation that's happening with your members around trying different things to get more people in the trades. What's your sense with your members, which covers everything from, builders to, the trades, everything from water, sewer, electrical, you name it, they're part of your organization. What's the sense that they have about the capacity for Waterloo region to be able to build the sheer volume of housing, as an example, and other infrastructure here in Waterloo region? Are they? I mean, there are challenges, but do they feel positive that we can get there?
I think it's changing so fast, and I think the reality for everyone is that our community of the future is not going to look like it does now. And where we live, how we live, whether it's maybe we don't have, backyards and picket fences, because that's not the reality. We have to start changing that. My industry is notoriously slow to adapt, and it reacts. And that seems to what happened. So in the past, whenever they needed employees, they just found them. And I think the reality is that they're starting to realize now that that's not the case. So we're trying to be innovative and creative and think what better would look like and what the future of their business are going to look like. Because now when they start reaching out to find the people to do the jobs, to fulfill their agreements, they're not finding them. So I think that that's the big issue right now, is really understanding that everything is different. And so many people will talk about immigration and they'll say, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or whatever. But the reality is that those are the people that are going to be building. Those are the people that are going to be, creating our community. They're, the brain surgeons and the baristas are all required in this community. And a lot of them, they're not coming from, from population growth from people in the community. It's coming in the outside. But that's the issue, is that they're starting to realize that how they got talent in the past, it doesn't exist anymore. And now they're starting to come to us, like on a daily basis. We're getting calls from people saying, and associations, back to you, notoriously associations do really well in tough times, and they slow down in the good times because they don't need you as much. But literally every single day now, people are coming in to say, I need some help. I need to figure out where I'm going from here. What's this going to look like, and what tools do we have? So they're 50% of them are ahead of the curve. 25% are just waiting for it to go back to the way it was, and the other 25% are just trying to hold on and determine which way they're going to go.
Let's turn to, and we're talking about housing, the focus on housing today, but a big chunk of housing being where it needs to be and in the right places is going to come from what Best Waterloo, which of course is the two chambers, and Communitech, Explore Waterloo, and Michelle's here from Explore Waterloo, and Waterloo EDC. I think David Franson's here, chair of the board. We're all working together as organizations, saying what are those big pieces that we need to get right. And so, each of you weigh in on this. Like, if we think about what needs to be done, our friends from the hospitals are here. We need a new hospital, but we need thousands of healthcare workers, from doctors and nurse case practitioners, clinicians, up and down the. So we need healthcare in the fullest sense, not for 1 million people, but for the 2 million people that this hospital in this region supports. We'll need LRT phase 2, and we've talked about this, and I think there's an urgency from the business community saying we got to get those shovels in the ground to have that built, because that will drive housing, as an example. All day two-way go is the infrastructure is mostly done, but we don't have the service up and running, but we need that to connect us to Toronto. Highway 7, we've only been talking about it for 57 years, but maybe in the 58th year, they'll put a shovel in the ground, and all of that leads to talent. So there's some big pieces that I would say are either, core infrastructure or human infrastructure that needs to be put in place. I want you to try and piece those things together. Karen, I'll start with you. Like, those are the investments we need to make, and it's what business needs to be successful. And of course, you're in the business of building housing, but everyone else, whether it's Toyota or the small business community, we need those things in place so that business can create jobs and economic wealth. Maybe give your sense of where we're at in those.
So I'd have to tell you that I think one of the reasons why Waterloo region is such an incredible place to live, work, and raise a family, go to school, and start a business is built on the vision of successive previous councillors. Because the one thing regional council has never done is lurch from one election to the next. And I think that vision, that looking out at the horizon to answer the very question you're asking, Ian, has been in our DNA for a very long time. You look at the University of Waterloo, and in one of its signature pieces is the fact that it's not only a co-op university and led the way, but it also allows inventors to keep their intellectual property. And that's the kind of spillover that we saw, that's why BlackBerry was there. And when BlackBerry went down, we reinvented ourselves again. And I think this community is really able to do that. But I think it's having that vision to look forward and say, are we going to shape the future, or are we just going to react to the growth that is coming? And it's why Scott Higgins, when he came with this incredible idea and this data and this experience, you go, you guys build houses. I don't build houses. but I can build community. And, you know, Jeff referenced in passing Ontario Works people, that path to employment. We had 4 employees that were doing it off the side of their desk, and Jeff came in and animated it. And these are now the most hypercharged employees I think we have, because of the success rate of taking people who live in a shelter or who are in Ontario Works and now are part of the workforce. And that's an incredible story, not just for those individuals, but for us as a community. I would be remiss if I also didn't talk about Immigration Partnerships Waterloo region, and the fact that it's very effective at welcoming newcomers and helping them see their place in the future of this community. And the chamber's always been involved in that. And I think those voices need to be at the table so we get it right, or we get it closer to right than ever. So I think it continues to be a collaboration, and it continues to need to be a shared vision.
Scott, maybe pick up on that. I mean, immigration is one of those things that we're all net new employment that's going to come into this region. By and large, even though we're slowing down immigration, it's going to come from newcomers to this country, and how they live and the types of family and the size of families that are coming here. That will affect housing and what's needed.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on the first question and then I'll answer that.
Sure.
I think, you know, we're all new immigrants. That ebb and flow cycle never changes. So to think that we're in some kind of microcosm of there's too much change is just a bunch of nonsense. But I'll get into the type of housing that we see in the market. But first, I think back to your point on just, you know, the synthesizing the infrastructure and what that leads to. Capital attracts capital. Public investment in physical infrastructure leads to private sector investment to mirror that. It's a simple philosophy. It's always happened. Look at LRT. LRT basically institutionalized the multi-res sector. Before that, pension funds. We were considered a tertiary market. When you're considered a tertiary market, you don't get pension allocation. We don't get pension allocation. You don't build buildings. The minute we put in LRT, all of a sudden the pension world said, you know what? It's not that far from Toronto. We'll just consider it Toronto. We became, you know, a tertiary market to primary market so long as it was invested along urban transit lines, because that was their investment mandate. So there's lots of things we can do where we do make major investments in infrastructure. The challenge that I have is efficiency of tax dollars. And so the real reality there is we have to watch the bureaucracy we build. Net new jobs can't be government based. They have to be private sector based. We need creation. The more we continually layer a process, the more we have to staff process, the less dollars we have for infrastructure, the less capital we can attract with the private sector. I think we all need to take a big look in the mirror, and I'm not going to put my dark MAGA hat on and jump up and down and say we need the Department of Government Efficiency. That's not today. But you know, the wrestling with the truth.
If you do have one, I'll put you in charge of it.
It's not happening, but wrestling with the truth that there's only so much public dollar. And like, just another small example, new housing is taxed heavily. That's because the existing tax base is politically sensitive. Not so sensitive at a provincial level, so we want provincial dollars to fund our infrastructure, because local dollars need to get funded by development charges, which go on the back of housing, which I flow through, and that's why housing costs a lot. So we need to find efficiency, but absolutely the investments that have been made in this community have led to tenfold private sector investments. The more we can do that, whether it's the hospital, whether it's the LRT, whether it's post-secondary, they work, and we need to keep doing them because it does attract capital. Back to the housing side, it's really different right now. You know, we see softness in the rental market, and yet we're in a housing crisis. Yeah. Why? Well, it's just affordability, right? And we say, well, no, that must be a supply problem. It's a cost problem. And the immigration, primarily where it's coming from, cohabitation is the norm. It's not different. So as an industry, we haven't evolved because we're not servicing the type of housing that they want. Should they have a basement apartment and a one-bedroom flat in a garage and a house? Probably. Are we building that? No. But are we allowed to build that? No. And so what happens when we build all those layers of bureaucracy is we change very, very slowly. Some of that's provincial driven building code. You know, it gets rigid and rigid. There's 5 code changes in the last 7 years. It's pretty tough to keep up with. So we have to stop doing that. But, you know, but all of that layers of regulation is because we broke the chain of trust. Now we need regulation. I'm not totally saying we don't need any, but we have a lot. And when we have a lot, it stifles innovation. We need to be able to experiment. We need to be able to try in a safe way. And so it's finding the balance. I fully appreciate municipalities have to take a 100-year view on what urban design looks like, or have regulation that protects the broad community. And so where's the right balance? I think we've tipped that balance a little bit far on over-regulation. And so it's really tough for an industry like ours, even if we are more innovative to react to some of the market changes that we're seeing.
Jeff?
There's nothing better than, like, we all have a perspective, we all live here and we have ideas about what would make this community better, but 2 weekends ago, Jenna, was the physician recruitment weekend, and there's nothing better than seeing your community through other people's eyes and that don't live here. Yeah, so people that are coming in, we put the show and tell on for the weekend, and we show them the best and the brightest. We drive them around in buses, and we take them to St. Jacob's Market, and we take them to Communitech, and we feed them, and we match them up. But the interesting thing that came out of the whole process, and it's not like we just need doctors, but for a thriving community, we do need physicians. But we had 50 doctors plus their partners in for the weekend, and we spent the whole weekend with them, and it was amazing how much housing and affordability and attainability will drive the ability to get doctors in this community. No question about it. And it's interesting, they don't care about parking. They don't care about, they want affordable housing, attainable housing. They understand that Google employees, is it 40% of them don't have licenses? They're okay being in the core. They understand that this is a gateway. And once they set up a practice here, and once their partner gets a career here, they're going to stay in this community and they're going to thrive. So it was like, it's fun. One of the things I thanked the group to say, like, thanks for helping me fall in love with my community again. Having said that, there is a number of things that are required, but if we could come up with an attainable house, we can bring in doctors, and then we can, the sky's the limit on what comes to the community.
Another thing that comes out of housing or housing's a result of is the jobs that are created and people that want to invest here. So right now we're having a discussion in the region around land assembly and the absolute necessity for having that type of land available for anchor employers. Whether it's Toyota or anyone else, doesn't matter. We need that in place, because if we're going to grow by 350,000 people, they're going to have to work somewhere, and we're going to need anchor employers that are going to have, supply chain jobs, etc. And those jobs will then create or necessitate the need for more housing and different types of housing. I want to draw this because none of these issues that we discuss, whether it's healthcare, whether it's housing, whether it's economic development and jobs, whether it's immigration, are divorced from one another. They're all integrated, and we need all of them. And you talked on it, or we've mentioned this. We need all these investments in LRT and housing and healthcare if we're going to have jobs, and we won't have the jobs if we haven't made those investments. So maybe draw that connection. I want all of you to weigh in from your different lens around the job creation that's going to be required here, and our ability to provide the infrastructure like housing and healthcare, because we are not. I think in the past there was a sense that, well, people are going to invest here. We're one of the best places in the world, which I think is probably still true. But capital can go, and you've talked about this. They can go where we are not the only game in town. So how do we make sure that we pull all these pieces together? Maybe I'll start with you, Karen.
I love these easy questions, Ian. We need all of it. You're right. Scott just talked about the LRT, and I want to say phase 2, because I don't want half an LRT. But that was a vision of successive regional councils who were committed to a long-term view. And it's the kind of thing that leads one to look at the east side lands by the airport. It's the fact that we, as a region, still own YKF, which is our local airport. It's a huge asset. And what did we do with that asset? Well, the University of Waterloo now has the Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Aviation. So we have, again, been able to collaborate to come up with something that will change air travel. And we have academics now running electric airplanes and training the pilots of tomorrow. Conestoga College is training the pilots of tomorrow and the engineers that will work on those planes. Those are the kind of synergies that we need. The East Side lands is very attractive for aviation and aeronautic related industry. We already have Conestoga Meats in that area, and they're a huge employer, and they're a collection of hog farmers, so it's a co-op. So again, we are looking at the industries that historically have been there, and we're continuing to move forward on it. A land assembly is necessary to be on the global stage and attract talent and investment, and that's why a land assembly in the opinion of the regional council, is a prudent thing to do because we recognize these will be intergenerational, long-term good jobs. And we need to worry about the people who are here now, the quality of life, and what that's going to look like for future generations. So we're committed to continue to look to the future for those kind of jobs and also retaining the kind of employers that we have now.
Jeff?
Picking up on the LRT and we just need everybody in this community. We don't just need we don't need pilots and engineers and mechanics. We need people that work to buy a coffee. Like if you go to I was talking to a developer the other day about like, well, maybe we should stop immigration. And I said, well, the reality is you own a big shopping center and there's a pretty good chance that most of the staff that are working there, a good chunk of the staff are newcomers. And second of all, the people that work, like talk to the restaurant and the hospitality industry, it's getting very, very difficult to find people. There's a lot of restaurants that aren't even open 5 days or seven days anymore because they don't have it. So we need housing for all levels of the population. And that's the key, to just understand that a thriving community includes everything. And we just can't build $900,000 starter homes. It just doesn't work. Like that's where the community breaks down. So Scott and I and team have been pretty actively vocal on building a better model and building for the future of the population.
Scott, you were a banker by trade before you got into development. Maybe touch on the two connected. Housing follows investment and new jobs and vice versa. I mean, you'll get more supply and demand.
Ian's going to love me because I'm not going to answer his question.
He never does. I ask the questions. He always ignores
following
me.
this path for a minute. I want to continue it. I forgot that I'm a banker now because of too many banker jokes at Christmas parties. They raise a good point. Like if I had my crystal ball on how we solve the housing crisis, how we deal with some of the things that we're talking about today, let's all just destroy our cell phones and come back as a collective we. I coach hockey. I coach my daughter's team and my son's team. And the first thing I do with the players is I sit them down all in a room and I say, you know what? Everyone's got to remember you're an individual just like everyone else, right? And it's a stark reminder for the team to put their baggage away. I don't care about them as individuals. I do. But the collective is what's going to lead to success. And if they can't wrestle with that, then you can't win. And we can all score 50 goals and be plus 11, but we're going to lose. And so I think we're losing as a society because we've forgotten how to form a collective we. And to your point, really early on, you know that I still hate the barn raising reference in this community. Karen jokes, I tell her every time. But the importance of that was the collaboration in the community, whether it was like hard work and neighbors coming together to raise a barn, or whether it was I'll open my Rolodex for you in tech and give you every contact I have, which would never happen in the Valley. This community has always just put its ego aside and worked together. And I think Build Now is an example of the continuation of a long decades and decades of legacy of collaborating in this community. We have to start having more collaboration in the community. And I think that starts in building places where community can form. The fact that you all came today means you're interested in this. We need to have more of this. We need to have less skip the dishes and Netflix and more community collaboration. Through that, we're going to look each other in the eye and build trust. We can leave today and some of you would trust me to build a building, and you should. And we can leave today and trust Karen to lead a government, and she should, and Jeff to organize trades to build things, and we should. But unless we come together and have those, we shouldn't be fighting over acres of farm. I understand that's somebody's farm. I totally appreciate that. And I understand the hardship that comes with that. But the conflict to that level comes from the lack of collective. There is a cultural fabric to Waterloo region. That's why we are going to win on the housing crisis. That's why we are going to win on the economic front. We do it better than everyone else. But if we lose that spirit and we get down into the minutia of, who knows what, township versus city versus industry versus people versus developer versus backyard, not my backyard, then we lose. And there's going to be compromises that none of us like. Most of my buildings are some derivative. I don't use the OLT or a tribunal to fight a neighborhood group. That's why I'm bald. I just stay there and deal with them, and then I lose all my hair with stress. But at the end of the day, it's that type of collaboration that we need to do, and then it needs to be done in a transparent way where we understand the sacrifices. What's the economic reality from a taxation point of view of building affordable housing? We should know that. What do we have to put on new housing to be able to pay for that because the general tax base can't cover it. We should know that. So, you know, I think I'm really excited actually that out of necessity, frankly, or competition might be a better way to say it, it's forcing these conversations again. Because when it was easy, we didn't have to. It was just easy. But now we're getting back to actually engaging back in the weeds. And I'm really excited about some of the solutions that are being talked about that are going to start to come to light, because those are only just people in this community coming together.
Leave it to Scott to ignore my question and then perfectly summarize the discussion. I would note that you said, you know, you left me out of what I should be doing and that you would have trust in me doing anything, but I'll leave that aside. We can discuss that afterwards. I do like the notion that everyone around this, in this room today and those of us up on stage, we all have a role to play. We need to come up with those creative ideas. We need to share them with one another, and we need to be speaking to government at all levels and the private sector about what those new solutions look like. We cannot have, and I think I've heard this common theme, the old paradigms are not going to work if we're going to meet the urgency of the moment for us as Waterloo Region. So with that, thank you so much to our panel for joining us. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And when we come back, if I see this, we're going to take a short break, an opportunity to connect and do some networking. When we come back on the other side of a break, the main stage in about 25 minutes, we'll have Ontario's Finance Minister, Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy. Thanks so much, and have a nice networking break. back, and I hope everyone enjoyed the networking break. Hopefully you had an opportunity to greet one another and perhaps say hi to the minister. One of two ministers we actually have here this afternoon. We are fortunate to have Michael Harris Jr., of course, the MPP for Kitchener-Conestoga, but also Minister of Red Tape Reduction. Maybe, Mike, if I can impose on you, I know it wasn't planned, but if you could come up and give us just a couple of minutes on the session we had this morning and red tape reduction, and then we'll move on to the rest of the program.
When is a politician going to turn down a microphone? I just heard Minister Bethlenfalvy say that. So listen, thank you all for being here today. I know I wasn't scheduled on the docket, but it's great to be able to see everyone and some familiar faces. This morning we had our first pre-budget consultation with the Ministry of Finance and the Minister himself over in Kitchener. And we had, gosh, I think we had what, Minister, about 40, 45 or almost 50 folks registered and presented. And it's an interesting process where everybody kind of gets like 3 minutes before the panel to give their sort of 2 cents as to what they want to see included in the provincial budget. So thank you to everybody here who was part of that this morning. And it went really well. You know, we heard a lot about transit. We heard a lot about how to encourage doctors to move to the region. We heard a lot about home building, which I know is really one of the bigger topics that are being talked about today. And just a general consensus that innovation and moving forward and the good things that we do here so well in Waterloo region are still alive and well and are being included in the submissions to the provincial budget. So I wanted to again thank Minister Bethlenfalvy for being here this morning and taking part in that. And I've got an interesting new portfolio as the Minister of Red Tape Reduction. I was brought in June, appointed by the Premier. Our ministry's been around for a couple of years now, but this is my sort of first 6 months at the helm. And we actually, I'll just tell this room as well. Did you say we're live streaming? Okay, maybe I won't. But but we do have our fall red tape reduction bill being introduced in the legislature this week coming up. And it's going to have a substantial impact on business and people and organizations here in the province. The numbers are still cabinet confidential, so I can't release them yet. I was going to if we weren't going to live stream, but don't tell anybody, Peter. But we've saved in the last 6 years, we have saved what we call regulated entities in the province, which is government organizations and businesses, over $1 billion in savings, eliminating red tape and regulation, which translates into over 1.5 million hours of time saved, which is absolutely phenomenal. So this bill is going to build on that, and we're going to have another bill introduced in the spring. So I will put the offer out to you now. If anyone in this room has any ideas as to how we can reduce red tape and overly burdensome regulation here in the province, we have a wonderful online portal where you can go and you can submit your own personal ideas. We're always happy to take them in through our office, the Ministry of Red Tape Reduction, of course, headquartered in Toronto, but you're always welcome to funnel things in through our constituency office here. So once again, thank you all for being here. Ian, thank you for giving me a couple minutes and indulging me, and we'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Mike. And we at the panel discussion just before we broke, that was the homework that everyone had, which is to come up with innovative new ideas on how to be able to spur faster and more housing be built. So stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be some takers on your suggestions for your next red tape bill. As we get started, Minister Bethlenfalvy, I'm going to introduce him. He's going to make some opening remarks, and then we'll have a fireside chat. So, and I got to get this right because I said the wrong riding this morning, and the minister is very, very adamant that he is in fact the MPP for Pickering Uxbridge, which I did not say this morning. He was elected in 2018, re-elected in 2022 as Minister of Finance. He's responsible for the management of the province's finances and building the environment for long-term economic prosperity. Minister Bethlenfalvy continues to deliver on the government's plan to build a strong Ontario with the support necessary for people and businesses today, while laying a strong fiscal foundation for future generations. With Premier Ford, he is working to get it done and build the housing and critical infrastructure needed for Ontario's growing population and economy. Prior to entering public service, Minister Bethlenfalvy served in senior leadership roles in several financial institutions, including as president and COO of the TD Securities USA and co-president of DBRS. He has served on the board of directors of many charitable organizations. In 2014, he joined the True Patriot Love Expedition to the Magnetic North Pole in support of Canadian military families. He holds a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Business Administration from McGill, which included a year at the HEC School of Management in Paris and a Master of Arts in Political Science from the University of Toronto. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Peter Bethlenfalvy.
Well, thank you, Ian. Yeah, he said I was the member for Ajax this morning, so yes, I did. But that was before we taped the show, so we set the record straight. It's great to be here. We've had a great day here in the region of Waterloo today, and I got to tell you, those budget consultations, everyone gets 3 minutes, and doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's amazing when you force people to say what they really need in 3 minutes. They're so powerful and impactful. It's like budget speed dating, and we had almost 50, and I love that. And what I really loved about today was that a lot of the presentations were about the region, really germane to the region, which is a microcosm for Ontario here in the region, and it's a microcosm for all of Canada. So as the region of Waterloo goes, really, Canada goes. So congratulations on a fantastic budget consultation session this morning. I'll just say a few things because I think I love the fireside chat, so I want to spend more time talking about what you want to talk about rather than what I want to talk about. But let me tell you a couple of things just out of our fall economic statement, because I just tabled that a couple of weeks ago. And that's kind of like a mini budget that we table in November. And the first thing I would say out of that fall economic statement is it's a good news fall economic statement. I'm so happy with it because of a couple of reasons. First, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I really believe that if you manage taxpayers' money with a value for money lens, then the pressure to raise taxes or cut services down the road so that I can make some of the investments of some of the presentations today, it allows you to do that. So being fiscally responsible with taxpayers' money, we improved the deficit by $9 billion in the fall economic statement. We're one of the only jurisdictions really in any jurisdiction that has a path to balance. In fact, if Ontario was a country, we'd be in the G20, and there's no G20 country that I'm aware of that is balancing their books. We are. In fact, we got a credit rating upgrade from the aforementioned DBRS that I was president of to AA. My team actually downgraded the credit in 2009 when I was there. So when I became finance minister, I said, holy shit, I got to, yeah. Sorry, live stream. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thumbs up from the camera guy. Okay, there we go. But that pressure was on. The shoe was on the other foot. And why is this important? Among many things, we live in uncertain times. So you want to make sure that you have the fiscal firepower, for when we went through COVID. That was very important. We have geopolitical risks all over the world, but it also, and for all the bondholders here, if there are any, I'm sorry, but I don't want to give you interest payments. I'd like to keep our interest expense as low as possible. And for some of you who are of a certain vintage, well, remember in the 1990s in Ottawa, interest expense was 33 cents on the dollar for program spending. And we're at 5.5 cents on the dollar. That's the lowest since the 1980s. Our debt to GDP is the lowest in over a decade. And that's the health, that's the fiscal health. That gives us so much more optionality about paying down debt, investing in healthcare. Anyone interested in investing in healthcare in this room? I've heard that a few times today. Yes, the chair says, yep, I'm one. It allows you to invest in your workers, the skills development fund. It allows you to invest in building schools and getting two-way all day go. I've heard that a few times for the last, every time I'm here. That's all I hear about, two-way all day go. But it gives you more optionality. So it's really important that we treat taxpayers with respect, that we really manage those scarce dollars as effectively as we can. One thing that we did do in this fall economic statement that I'm particularly proud of is that many of you in this room are doing well. But I got to tell you, 50% of Canadians and 50%, almost 50% of Ontarians are $200 away from not making the next bill payment. People are struggling, and they're not just struggling in Canada. This is a worldwide phenomenon after very high interest rates, the shock of the high interest rates and the shock of the high inflation, and grocery prices are still, they're up 25%. You know, so a dozen eggs costs 25% more. And for a lot of people, that's a tough environment. So because our tax revenues are up, we decided to give a taxpayer rebate based on having more money in our coffers, $200 per taxpayer in Ontario at a time when they really need it. Those checks will be hitting in early in the new year. This guy's having trouble. You put the $200 to cough drops. I think that'd be good. But seriously, it's really important that we take care of everybody in the province at a time when they really need it. We're also investing in infrastructure, critical infrastructure for our growing communities. Tremendous population growth here in the region. It's happening all across Ontario. So we got to continue to invest in that critical infrastructure. We got to tackle gridlock. That's a province-wide phenomena in terms of moving people, quality of life, but also moving goods. We got to compete. So that's another area. We got to fortify our healthcare system. And while primary care, we lead the country in how many doctors per person, per capita here, at 88%, that's not good enough. That's not good. I would submit that's not good enough for anybody in this room. We got to reach 100%. And that's why we're very happy that Jane Philpott has agreed to advise us on how to get to 100%, because that's our government's ambition. I met with her last week and said, you got 100 days to come up with your plan, which is what she wants to do. She's ready to go. And so are we. So we're going to get the job done. It's not going to happen overnight, but you got to have a plan, you got to have a vision, and then you got to execute that plan. I'll just say we're going to continue to invest in the region. I talked about 2A All Day Go. We've got the hospital that we want, the brand new hospital at the University of Waterloo. We got to tackle homelessness. We've done a lot. We got to do more. Housing, we've done a lot. We got to do more. Highway 7, that's come up a few times. We got to do more. We're going to do more. And we're going to continue. And thank you to Mike Harris and our colleagues here in the region. Got to tell you, these guys, you feel it. They work their tails off. Jess Dixon, Brian Riddell, all of them work day in, day out. They're accessible. I know you're very accessible, Mike. Thank you for your service, and welcome to Cabinet. And I'm glad you didn't disclose Cabinet information. So we're going to continue to listen. I'm here to listen. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to the fireside chat. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, thank you, Minister, for those opening remarks, and I appreciate the context. It's valuable context. But thank you for making time to be with us today, not only in Waterloo Region for the budget consultation, which was all morning, but making time and sticking around to be with us here today. And as we are, this series is Vision 1 Million, and are we ready? And the question is on healthcare, on housing, on talent and infrastructure, all of these issues. Today we want to focus on, and we have focused, we had a panel earlier today, and to try and tackle what some of those issues are and what some of the challenges are and how we can be helpful in driving solutions. And if you want to hear more from the minister, if this is not going to be enough for you, don't worry. If you listen to Business to Business on 570 News Radio at noon on Sunday, powered by Cowan Insurance, you can find the minister who did an interview with Greg and I this morning before his budget consultation. So we're riding him hard and putting him away wet today, of being here in the region of Waterloo. Listen, let's start with when we think about housing, the government is trying to assist communities outside of the GTA and the region of Waterloo with the supply of affordable housing units, and I think every community is struggling with that. Talk about what some of those ways are that you are trying to tackle that across the province and certainly here in Waterloo Region.
Well, thanks, Ian, and thanks for hosting this. I've got a few of the mayors here in the region. We got to continue tackling those development charges. You're going to hear the Premier and I get them lower, let's get more built. But there's not just that. We put in money for infrastructure. That's something we heard over and over again, that sewage and water and wastewater has to be, if we can help out there. And so we've We're funding that. Obviously more on infrastructure. And this all came in my last budget. Infrastructure for roads and bridges, kind of the bones to kind of allow for more housing built. And by the way, it's all types of housing. You know, we talk about affordable housing. I think that's critically important, but we also got to talk about student housing, particularly in a region like Waterloo, which has students. We got to have student housing, seniors housing, all types of seniors housing. You know, condos, density, front door, back door, supportive housing. I've put in a lot more money for supportive housing and wraparound services for homelessness, more to do. But I think those are the types of things that we got to work together. Of course, we provided incentives as well through the Building Faster Fund, which means that if you hit your housing target, you get a check. And in my riding of Pickering, they've already hit their 2024 housing target, so they're going to get a check. And we got to continue working with the federal government. We can't do this alone. The federal government's had some programs. I know one mayor said, one of the big city mayors said, let's instead of doing this over 5 years, give us the money now. Let's keep building, and we got to continue. Minister of Red Tape, where are you? Working with municipalities and others, just get to a faster yes or no. I hear from builders, from investors, from people on the ground over and over again the amount of time it takes to get to yes or no, but that's critical. You know, and I travel a lot in the States, and, you know, whether it's our healthcare system or our building system or whatever, we've got to be way more productive. You know, you go in a hospital, you can't wait for surgeries and emergencies. You got to, you know, as the Premier says many times, you know, you got to wait like minutes before you get to the next thing. And that's what happens in a lot of places in the States. That's what we got to do here in our healthcare system. It's what we got to do in our building. And I'll say one last thing. You know, the construction industry, we've got many players from the construction industry here. Our productivity is very low. Don't ask me, talk to the experts. They say in construction, our productivity on a comparative basis is very low. And, you know, I think the answer to that, we're all working on the answer. It's the skills development, the investment in AI and technology, all the skilled trades investments going on in the college, Conestoga and others. That's the answer. So you are so well positioned to help power that productivity gain, which what does that mean? It used to mean people thought, oh, you're going to put me out of work. No, this is so you can do your work more fulfillingly with a bigger paycheck, with a sustainable job. And I think, you know, I come to the region of Waterloo and I say, you got it all here. You really have it all here to just harness that innovation and that growth to put Ontario and Canada on the map in terms of economic growth.
And our friends at Communitech and some of the startups are in the construction space of having more technology and innovation. We're just scratching the surface on that. And I know Jeff and the folks at Grand Valley Construction Association continue to work on that as well. In the fall economic statement of 2023, you announced the creation of the Ontario Infrastructure Bank, which I think has been rebranded Building Ontario Fund, to support major infrastructure across the province with funding from pension funds. And we talk about, we need the private sector has a role to play, not only in the building, but in the financing of that, particularly with institutional investors. I think Scott mentioned that in part of our panel discussion earlier. A year in, what's your assessment of the agency and kind of where is it at? And where do you see, you know, room for improvement, or where do you see the path growing?
What's the date today? It's the 14th or something?
14th.
14th. So our new CEO started 2 days ago.
Well, give them at least to the end of the week before.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about this. Folks, what's the Building Ontario Fund? I rebranded it from a bank because it doesn't take deposits. It's about building. And what's it going to build? Well, first of all, we have a $191 billion capital plan on the taxpayer dime. So I thought, well, we got to build a lot more than 191 billion over 10 years of capital. Let's crowd in the private sector, pension funds, life companies, others. They want to invest in long-term assets in this province. They go around the world and they invest in Australia, UK, and other parts of the world. Why not right here in Ontario? So the idea is in some very core areas like long-term care, like transportation, like energy, like housing. I mentioned student housing, different types of housing. If we can partner where we as the taxpayer puts up some money, but let's say the rest of it comes from these pension funds who want long-term assets, we've got it all. We've got some of the smartest people here in Ontario in the pension world. So let's harness that activity so we can build more and we could build faster, and we can build stuff that otherwise wouldn't get built. Maybe just pause for a second and think about the energy space. You know, what we've just announced is the biggest energy procurement and ambition in the history of Canada, and probably in North America. I mean, it is massive amount of energy that we need. We need 75% more energy than we have today. And we're not alone in needing this energy to power the electric vehicles, to power industry, to power data centers, to power consumers and a growing population. You know, that's the same problem much of Europe has, the States, Japan, you know, and most of those states are all on coal. You folks know that like India is 75% on coal, China's 60. The US has actually gone down to about 16%, but Japan and Germany, they're still using 20% coal to power their electricity. You know, I'm going to use a real technical term here in Ontario, that in Ontario, you all know that we use squadouche. And squadouche means zero coal. Mike Harris, your dad, started the process with the Lakeview coal plant in 2002. And to credit Premier McGuinty, he followed through on that vision to get us off coal. So now we have one of the greenest grids on the planet. Okay, but we need 75% more. How are we going to do that? And we're blessed in Ontario. Again, we've got the resources. We've got the political and the public support for nuclear. You go into many parts of the world, they don't have it, but I'll tell you, it's changing. In Europe, every country except for Germany and Austria wants more nuclear. That's a big sea change over the last 10 years. And there's no path to net zero, in my mind, without nuclear. We're also investing more in renewable, 5,000 megawatts on renewables and hydro. So we have a plan. And by the way, there's states and provinces around us that don't have that same opportunity to get the type of power generation that we have. That'll power our economy. It's part of our vision. And it's things like that, I know you started with the Building Ontario Fund, and I'm ending up on energy, but you know, the capital to power that is going to in part come from long-term investors.
Well, we can't build housing if we don't have power, and we don't have electricity, and we don't have water, and we don't have the core infrastructure for sure. And supersizing or accelerating growth of housing is going to take the private sector investment. So the fall economic statement a couple of weeks ago, you know, housing starts are not where the government wanted them to be, where anyone needs them to be. So the predictions are a little lower, and you know, we all know why. I mean, it's been a worldwide high inflation, you know, a slowdown in the economy, and that's been the same provincially for home builders. Maybe talk about those challenges and how you see that changing, because we have to, whatever ground we haven't, or whatever built housing we haven't built right now, we have to make up, because what we know for sure is the housing needs going to be there. How do we kind of get back on track?
Well, Ian, you're 100% right that, you know, the high interest rates, they really cause a slowdown in financing of new builds. There's the cost of the raw materials and the supply chain, and a bunch of factors going into the cost of building. But let me tell you this, I kind of look at it as the Stanley Cup. You know, our ambition, call it $1.5 million, call it $1 million, $2 million, doesn't matter. We want to win the Stanley Cup. That's our vision. That's our goal. And we're not going to relent because we didn't make the playoffs this year, or because maybe there's an analogy there with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know. But we're not going to relent. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to take all levels of government, municipally, regionally, federally, provincially, to work together. I mentioned a number of the things that you do. You know, we opened up. I put, I can't even remember, about $1 billion for the sewage and water over a year ago. We did the first round. Okay, some were successful. Now we've opened up a second round. I think they're just closing up, and so we'll have a second round. And you don't build a home the next day after putting some water and sewage. This takes time. You don't give up. There's cycles. We're going through a cycle. I'm very confident, and we're not going to relent on our ambition to work with everybody to get as many homes built. And like I said, all kinds of homes, not just, think of it as not either or, but and these types of homes.
The fall economic statement also talked about the statement that 300,000 manufacturing jobs were lost under the previous administration, and a lot of that was red tape, higher energy costs, and tax levels comparable, particularly to the States or overseas. Maybe talk about the current climate, because we're seeing more manufacturing jobs coming here. How does this, how has that been managed, and in terms of connecting jobs to housing and other social services? I mean, we if we're going to have the workforce of the future, they're going to need housing, but those jobs need to be here as well.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to unpack in what you just asked there, but I would say one of the things is, we got to be tax competitive too. I don't think, I'm on record. I think the day after Chrystia Freeland tabled her budget last year, I was in New York. So I was on Bloomberg TV. So, I don't know, tens of millions. And I said, you can't tax your way to prosperity, because the Wall Street journalists there, reporters wanted, what's your take on what your federal finance minister did? I just don't believe you can tax your way to prosperity. I mentioned being fiscally responsible. If we put money back into businesses' pockets, you folks will figure out the best way to deploy that capital. And it's not just big businesses, it's small businesses as well. I gave an example on your show this morning, I think I did, that let's take an example of small business. We've cut the taxes there. We've done other things, cutting red tape. We've saved $3.7 billion of costs through WSIB and other measures for small business, $8 billion for all businesses. But let's just take some of the small businesses. I'm from Quebec, and I used to be able to buy a beer at the corner store. And when I moved to Toronto, I looked all day for where I could find a beer. And it turns out you could buy a beer at something called the beer store. Have you ever heard of the beer store? So I come to Ontario and I say, well, this is in the 80s, by the way. So this is a long time ago. But I just felt very strongly, and so did our government, and we ran on in 2018 and 2022, that why should convenience stores, where many parts of the world and grocers you can have convenience and choice, why not here in Ontario? Let's get it done. And we have. And the convenience stores, we got over 4,000 convenience stores with licenses. I think it's close to 5,000 now that were successful. And they've been doing this, and they say it's a game changer. They said they would hire 7,000 new employees. So think about that. It's good for small business. They're getting traffic through their stores. They're hiring people. By the way, the LCBO's revenues and bottom line are going up, so it's a really good deal. And who's the big winner? Consumers, and choice and convenience of consumers. So, what we do in government is to set the conditions for economic job growth. So, you talk about manufacturing. We can't dictate where, capital goes, but if we put the conditions in place, tapping into what resources we have, we got amazing natural resources, critical minerals for the batteries. We've got the energy sector. We've got the talent and the skill base here. We're next to the largest economy on the planet with 500 billion two-way trade. I mean, I get so excited because we really do have it all in Ontario. We just have to unleash and build on the opportunities that we have.
Just finishing off with housing, I mean, some of those economic challenges that we talked about. It's important that, and what we did this morning in the panel was trying to identify what some of those challenges were, and so some of there's investment of dollars in things like core infrastructure or different programs, but there's also policy changes. What are some of the things around policy to speed? And we talked about this, speeding approvals and sort of doing those things which we know affect capital investment. What are some of those policy changes that you're looking to do to try and spur, and particularly in housing, but that follows through in other job or investment opportunities?
Well, you've got a lot of municipal, regional, you got a minister in charge of red tape, you got a lot of experts here. And so I'm sure they've given you a lot of really good input into what we've done in terms of the rear view mirror and what we need to do aspirationally in the looking out the windshield. I just think that it's all hands on deck and looking at ways to become more efficient, the permitting process, incentives to build, clearing out the way of taxes for sure in areas. For example, what's one of the things that we did? About 2 years ago, I put in my budget that I was willing to waive HST on purpose-built rental buildings. So 8% is the Ontario share. But because we're commingled with the federal tax rate, the feds had to do it. So I asked them to do it. And A year later, they did. So they're 5%. So 13% reduction in the cost of, if you're building a purpose-built rental, 13% right there. I've heard from a lot of builders that was the difference between building and not building. So there's tax measures that you could do. There's regulatory measures you can do. I've talked about the types of funds that we put out there to partner with municipalities in terms of cost share on infrastructure. As the Premier and Mike and I always say, we're open to more good ideas. So keep hitting us with the good ideas. And that's why, in part, we had a budget consultation this morning for almost 3 hours.
So let's talk about the pre-budget consultation. And you're always in listening mode, and you're having meetings across the province. Mike is all of your caucuses across the province. Well, what are you hearing from small businesses, not only today, but in your other consultations? I mean, is it the cost of doing business? Is it red tape? Approvals for whether it's housing or development? We've talked about some of those things, but what are small business specifically? Because that's what I hear. Is that what you're hearing from the small business sector?
Yeah, you hear a lot of things, and again, it's many things. But let me just highlight a couple. Talent, the labor pool. And and I'll say this on the record, and I've said it before, I think the federal government's blundered with regard to immigration, mismanaged the file. You can't, and I'm the son of immigrants, refugees, that came to this great country. And so I'm very pro-immigration, but you gotta have a plan. You gotta have the infrastructure, the schools. I mean, we talk a lot about asylum seekers. We're funding a lot. That's the right thing to do, but we have to work together in managing that immigration file. And now we've got to blend instruments that's bringing those numbers down. It's going to impact the universities and the colleges here. It's going to impact the small businesses. So, this is an area that we're not responsible for immigration in this, at the provincial level. The federal government is. We have to work together. We need immigration. Absolutely, 100%. We need the infrastructure to be in place when they come here. There's a million net population growth in the last 2 years. We'll probably get another 400,000 this year. That's a big number, folks. That's a lot of schools. That's a lot of healthcare. That does drag our productivity because those services costs are there up front, and it takes time to get them settled, get them housing, get them the supports, get them a house. Get them a place to live, an affordable place to live, get them into the economy, get them, all of that into society. It's the great, and the Canadian dream that's always been, for me, it propelled me into public service, is that let's continue to make this the greatest country to come, where you come from all over the world. Everybody other than Indigenous came from somewhere else. And we've got an obligation to make sure that we continue to have that consensus in Canada, but it takes hard work.
Let's shift gears a little bit. The province made a big bet on the auto sector and EV and battery plants in particular, rightfully so. That whole marketplace was changing, whether we think about Volvo and Honda and Stellantis. The horizon to a more full adoption of the EV market may have stretched out somewhat. Whether there's changes in the U.S. with the presidential election, but it's not going away. It may have just put that timeline out. What's your assessment of the investment that the province has made and the opportunity that's here? I mean, we have obviously Toyota here in town. We've got, the auto space, and us being at the forefront of this electric vehicle, no emissions auto space is positioned as well. But what's your assessment of where we're at in that cycle, and what's the long term for Ontario?
It's going to be wildly successful. And I think about it in terms of, 1990, I got my first Motorola cell phone, but you just knew that cell phones in one shape, you didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. I feel the same way with electric vehicles. There's no question the battery powered and zero emission is inexorable that we're going to get there. So we've got the footprint here in Ontario. And I, again, put us up against anybody with the critical minerals, with the manufacturing, the advanced manufacturing capability, the talent, the proximity to the U.S., the energy. We just announced on Tuesday, Mike, correct me, how many, we're putting new charging, big plan for charging stations. No, way more than that. It's a big, so the infrastructure is coming. So it's, to me, we'll sit here, you'll ask me this question in 10 years, Ian, like when we're sitting here.
Absolutely.
And I'm still the Minister of
You-
Finance.
You might still be Minister of Finance. I'll be retired, but
Okay. Well, your successor will
Yeah.
ask me, how do you feel? Can you keep up with the demand for electric vehicles? That'll be the question.
I want to talk about the jobs of the future and some of the things you've already touched on. The theme of this session is Vision 1 Million. Are we ready? We've talked about some of the things already. Health, 1,300.
1,300.
So healthcare, the new hospital, LRT phase 2, you've heard about that today because that will drive where the housing is into the future. We've talked about if we're going to be 1 million people, something like in the order of 70,000 new homes. We've talked about talent and immigration. That is where the talent of the future is coming from. We just have to manage that. Infrastructure, you talked about all day two-way go, Highway 7, core infrastructure. All of this leads to not only the housing side, but those jobs of the future. And you touched on energy. And having the energy and the natural resources, the skilled workforce, but trade deals that work is another thing that is top of mind for people. We got to do all of those pieces, but what it rests on is Canada's a trading nation and Ontario is a trading nation. So maybe talk a little bit. I know I've got some trepidation about what happened in the U.S. election, and we've been hearing about tariffs. The premier was I hear earlier in the week talking about that. Maybe touch on that because that's a fear for a trading province and a trading country to be caught in this environment. So maybe touch on our growth and the things that we have to react to, like external forces on trade deals.
Two things I want to say. First, you started on infrastructure a little bit. So I do want to say 190 billion of infrastructure spend. And we inherited an infrastructure deficit. Okay, you got to keep building, and this is going to happen for decades now. And we're playing a little bit of catch up, but this is going to continue. And you feel it here in the region. Two-way all day go, Highway 7. There's a whole bunch of things that we got to keep building, and you can't slow down. You just got to keep going. The second thing you talked about trade. So yeah, there's a democratically elected new administration in the U.S. and pretty clear-cut victory, and now I understand also in the House.
Yep, it's all three levels.
So that's democracy, and so regardless of who won, our plan was to, and we've been through it once on the first round, our administration with the Trump administration, and of course with working with Ottawa. You put on your Team Canada hat at that point, and we've been through it once before. We're working on going, on the next round. And one of the things that we've been doing, and the Premier's been an absolute all-star on this, is meeting with governors, signing MOUs with states, telling the story in the states, meeting with state representatives, meeting with House representatives, meeting with the future officials of the new administration, whether it was Harris or Trump, and telling the story. Because one of the things is, America deals with a lot of countries, and sometimes they forget about Canada, and they apologize about that. It's up to us to make sure we tell that story, that 9 million people wake up every day in the U.S. with a job to export products to Ontario. That's staggering. And I tell you, a lot of them are Ohio. The vice president's from Ohio. He knows that story. The governor of Minnesota who lost, he knows that story. The governor of Illinois, I could go on. New Jersey, Texas, Florida, on and on. This didn't happen overnight. We have to also tell the story that 500 billion two-way trade, we'd be the third largest country if we were a country in Ontario trading with the U.S. after China and Mexico. Ontario, it's balanced trade. It's like 250 each way. So we're not really the target. They're going after people, countries that have big trade deficits. But we have to tell that story, the jobs, the two-way trade, the critical minerals we have in the north, the energy security. We export 54% of the energy into the U.S. In oil. They're not going to stop using oil. We've got the oil. We're transitioning to zero carbon. There's no question about that. But they're not going to, we have some cards. We've been on a charm offensive. We had many ministers over the years go down, and we got the Premier who's given more Canadian football leagues to Americans in the last few years. So there's a lot of CFL footballs in governors' offices right now, because that's how you build those relationships. You tell the story, and you continue, and we'll navigate this.
Listen, I'm just going to wrap up, but thank you so much for joining us. I also want to thank our panelists, Jeff McIntyre, Chair Redmond, and Scott from HIP Developments for taking time together to talk about issues that are impacting us here in the region and how we can collaborate, once again, emphasizing the importance of housing to the region. Minister Bethlenfalvy, for spending most of your day here in Waterloo region. You're always welcome.
All of my day, not
all
most
of
my
your
day, all
day,
of my day.
and you're also welcome to come back to this podium or on the radio show anytime you would like. As we close today's event, I'd like to thank our incredible partners and sponsors, our title sponsor, Conestoga College Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning, our silver sponsor, Gore Mutual, bronze sponsors, EY and the Boardwalk, our community partners, the City of Kitchener, City of Waterloo, Communitech, Cornerstone Association of Realtors, Explore Waterloo Region, North Guide, Township of Woolwich, and Waterloo EDC. Our production sponsor, our friends at Goodco Productions, and for our host venue here today, the Ken Sealing Waterloo Region Museum. And a special thanks to our hospitality partner, Bingamans. Thank you for all of you attending either virtually or in person today and supporting the work of the chambers in our events and programs. For additional networking opportunities, be sure to explore a full calendar of upcoming virtual and in-person events on our website at greaterkwchamber.com. Thanks very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
That's great. Really appreciate it.